Shabbat Shalom. I think I mentioned last time about Shavuot, which is coming soon, and the countdown to Shavuot, which is known as the period of the counting of the Omer. I think I talked last time also about how Shavuot used to be basically an agricultural festival, but necessarily became spiritualized once the temple was destroyed about 2,000 years ago, because all the rituals associated with Shavuot suddenly became null and void. There was no longer any place to bring the first fruits, and so Shavuot went from being the festival of the first fruits, Chag HaBikurim, to becoming Zman Matan Toratenu, the time of the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai. Kind of a large shift in the meaning of a holiday, but up until that time, there really was no holiday specifically celebrating the giving of the Torah, and so it was a deft move on the part of the rabbis to make this change. And of course, they had to reformat all of Judaism at that time, because when the temple stood, we were a temple-based religion. When suddenly there was no more temple and eventually no more land of Israel, we had to make a dramatic shift so that Judaism could become portable and survivable outside the land of Israel. So the counting of the Omer originally was kind of a tense time, because it was the waiting period that the people engaged in until the harvest of the first wheat. And of course, this time of year in Israel is the dry season, and there was always some anxiety about whether it would be too dry, whether there would be enough moisture from the dew, in order to sustain the wheat crop until the time of the harvest. So mostly, of course, it worked out, but some years I'm sure were better than others. So the way this translates to the counting of the Omer today is this is also a somewhat anxious time for us. It's a time when we're meant to look at ourselves intently, to evaluate ourselves as objectively as possible, where we're weak, where we're strong, and the idea being preparation for the reception of the Torah anew in the way that we live our lives today. Of course, we believe that revelation is an ongoing process. It's not something that just happened 33 centuries ago, but that God is talking all the time. The problem is, do we have the ears to perceive it? Do we have the eyes to notice it? And I would say a lot of the time the answer is no. So this period of preparation is really a time for us to prepare ourselves to receive the Torah. There's also a sense here, going back to the ancient interpretation, that the Israelites had sunk to a very low level spiritually during the time that they were in Egypt. They experienced a descent spiritually to what the rabbis called the 49th level of degradation. Had they sunk even one level further into the 50th level, according to the understanding of the rabbis, it would have been impossible for them to ever emerge from a state of enslavement to Egypt. As it was, they had 49 days of liberation in order to raise themselves to a level where, by the time they reached Mount Sinai, they would be in proper shape spiritually to receive the Torah from God. Maybe that was the inspiration for what the Kabbalists later did with the counting of the Omer, where they made these 49 days quite precise in terms of the lower seven sfirot. What do I mean by the lower seven sfirot? It's a story, and in the time that we have, I'll just be able to introduce it. Next week, I think we'll go into more detail about it. But the whole idea of sfirot is contained in this diagram here. Again, we won't go into detail this week, but you can see that it's not a simple diagram. It's an attempt to portray the flow of life within divinity itself. Of course, we say in Judaism, God is one, and we insist on the oneness of God in a big way. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad is something that we insist on as the basis of our understanding of God and Judaism. At the same time, we have another prayer, the Aleinu, which says, on that day, meaning sometime in the future, God will be one and his name will be one. So already we're talking about maybe the fact that God is not quite as simple a unified reality as we might think. What the Kabbalists bring out in their understanding of the 10 Sfirot is that there is a kind of complexity to the divine being in the same way that there is a kind of complexity to our human being. That we are certainly one, like I'm one Alan Green, and you are one of who you are, and yet there are different parts to your body, to your personality, to your habits, to your spirituality. We are complex beings at the same time. And so the Kabbalists attempted through their theory of the 10 Sfirot to uncover some of the complexity of the divine life that flows not only within God, but within us and within the universe as a whole. And this is linked in a very beautiful way to the counting of the Omer. I see, though, that we're running out of time for this video, and so next week I'll go into a little bit more about how the counting of the Omer is related to the lower 7 Sfirot of the divinity as the Kabbalists conceive of it, and how perhaps we can apply that to our lives. In the meantime, I want to wish you Shabbat Shalom and a happy counting of the Omer.